During the trip to Europe, my mother was very angry and said that I had ruined the family vacation because of my period. My name is Madison. I was 15 when my own mother told me through clenched teeth, "Don't ruin this trip for everyone just because you're uncomfortable." I was bleeding, heavily nauseous, and dizzy. But instead of sympathy, I got eye rolls from my little brothers and silence from my dad. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I smiled, nodded, and planned how to take my power back. They thought I was ruining their vacation, but they had no idea what they were doing to me, and no idea what was coming next. Hey, I'm Madison Taylor. I'm 15. I live in Colorado and just finished sophomore year. I'm not dramatic. I don't like attention. I'm usually the one keeping peace when everyone's yelling. My mom, Cheryl, is the kind of person who schedules bathroom breaks on vacations. My dad, David, is nice, I guess, but mostly quiet. And my brothers, Jake and Logan, think sarcasm is a personality. We had planned a 2-week road trip across the U.S., Grand Canyon Route 66, LA. A once-in-a-lifetime family bonding experience, as my mom kept calling it. I wanted to be excited. I really did. But then my body had other plans, and so did they. Before I tell you how I turned this nightmare into the biggest wake-up call my family ever got, hit that like button if you've ever had to smile through pain just to keep others comfortable. Drop a comment if you've ever been called overly sensitive, and subscribe because what happened next changed how I saw everything. That trip started as a dream. But from the moment I stepped into the car, it felt like I was the one mistake in their perfect itinerary. Let me take you back to the beginning. That summer, everything was supposed to be perfect. My mom had been planning the family vacation since January, obsessing over Google Docs, packing checklists, and TripAdvisor reviews. We'd mapped out every stop, national parks, roadside diners, a couple nights in Vegas for the photos, then finally the Grand Canyon and LA. It was meant to be a memory-making, once-a-year bonding marathon. No one asked if I wanted to go. Saying no would have made me ungrateful and uncooperative, two of Mom's favorite labels for me whenever I didn't match her Pinterest-level expectations. I tried to be excited. I packed the clothes she approved, helped fold brochures, even printed our itinerary on cardstock. But in the days before we left, something felt off. My body was already giving me quiet warnings, a dull ache in my lower back, that heavy, dragging sensation in my stomach, and the creeping exhaustion that made everything feel like it took twice as much energy. The night before the trip, I got my period. And not just any period, that kind. The kind where you feel like your entire insides are being wrung out like a soaked towel. My vision blurred, my skin went clammy, and I knew this wasn't going to be normal. I told my mom the next morning while we were loading suitcases into the trunk. She barely looked up from arranging the cooler. "That's unfortunate," she said, "but we're on a schedule." My dad gave me a sympathetic glance but didn't say anything. Classic. Jake, who's 13 and thinks he's hilarious, muttered something like, "Guess we're going to be making a lot of pit stops now," and Logan, the 11-year-old, laughed too loudly. No one corrected them. Not even Mom. Not even Dad. I climbed into the back seat and put in my earbuds. Day 1 was bad. Day 2 was worse. We were somewhere in Arizona when I started feeling faint. The heat was unbearable. My cramps were sharp and constant, and the car smelled like beef jerky and sunscreen. I quietly asked if we could stop early that day. Just check into the Airbnb so I could lie down. My mom glanced back through the mirror. "Madison, we don't get to do this every year. You're not dying. Just push through it." That line, "push through it," kept echoing in my head like a broken ringtone. We hiked the Grand Canyon Rim Trail the next morning. I had to sit down every 10 minutes. My legs felt like lead. I wasn't trying to be dramatic, I was just in pain. Real pain. The kind of pain that makes you feel like your body is betraying you and everyone else is rolling their eyes while you bleed quietly. Jake kept sighing loudly every time I paused, and Logan called me a drama queen under his breath. I caught my mom giving them a little smirk, like she found it funny but didn't want to say it out loud. My dad just kept walking ahead, pretending not to hear. By the time we stopped for lunch at this local cafe near the canyon edge, I was shaking. The bathroom was a mess, and I had to go in 3 times just to deal with the bleeding. Every time I came back to the table, my brothers made another comment. "What again?" Jake said, snorting into his soda. "She's killing the vibe," Logan added. "And Mom?" She gave me that look, the one that says I'm being a burden, ruining her picture-perfect plans. I couldn't believe how easy it was for them to act like I was the problem. That's when I realized something I hadn't let myself admit before. This wasn't just about the vacation. This had been going on for years. Little dismissals, subtle favoritism, the way my needs always came last. My mom didn't see me as a person with boundaries or pain. She saw me as another task to manage another potential mood killer in her master plan. My dad's silence made it worse. He never defended me, never stepped in, always played the neutral referee while letting my brothers say whatever they wanted. That night, back at the Airbnb, I finally asked her again, calmly. "Can I please stay here tomorrow while you guys go hiking? I'm in serious pain. I'm bleeding heavily. I need to rest." She exhaled like I was wasting her time. "You want to stay in bed all day? Really, Madison? You're 15. I didn't raise you to be weak. We all made sacrifices for this trip." There it was. Weak. That word hit harder than anything. Like being in pain made me defective. Like I had to apologize for my uterus daring to act up during her vacation. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood, nodded once, and went into the guest room. I stared at the ceiling fan for hours that night. Something inside me cracked open, but not in a fragile way, in a cold, clear way. This wasn't going to change. Not unless I made it change. I didn't know what that meant yet. I wasn't the kind of person who made scenes or burned things down, but for the first time in a long time, I stopped trying to fix it. I stopped blaming myself. The next morning, I got up before anyone else. I made coffee. I set out breakfast bars. I told my mom, "You win. I'll stay behind today. I'm sick." She barely looked up from lacing her sneakers. "Good, don't make a mess." They left, and I finally exhaled. I curled up on the couch, heating pad on my stomach, and for the first time in days, I didn't feel like I was suffocating. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt awake. A little detached, but also sharper than I'd ever felt. And that was when I noticed something. My brother had left his phone on the charger by the TV, wide open, TikTok app still running, notifications flooding in. One of them read, "Bro, she's so annoying, can't even hike without whining." I picked it up, watched the video. It was of me, from the day before, hunched over trying to breathe through the cramps. My brother's voices in the background mocking. "She's on her period or something, I think she's dying," one of them said. 60,000 views, hundreds of comments, most of them laughing. My fingers went ice cold. They didn't just ignore my pain, they turned it into content. They thought I'd stay quiet. They had no idea who I was becoming. The video wasn't just embarrassing, it was cruel. Watching myself stumble along the Grand Canyon Trail while my brothers narrated like I was a joke broke something I hadn't even realized was still intact. There I was, pale, sweating, trying not to pass out, while Jake zoomed in with sarcastic commentary and Logan made gagging sounds. The hashtags they'd used made it worse. Dramatic sister, # vacation ruined. Send help, she bleeds. The comments were brutal. Somebody get her a wheelchair. Is she faking for attention? Typical teenage drama queen. I couldn't stop watching. I must have played it 20 times, analyzing every second. And in each playback, I stopped feeling humiliated and started feeling something else, cold, quiet rage. They made me a meme. And my parents. They left me in pain alone so they could enjoy a hike. I don't know when the tears started, but they didn't last long. I wiped my face, pulled my laptop from my bag, and started typing. Not a rant, not a sob story, a journal entry. For me, for clarity. I documented everything. Dates, quotes, times, screenshots of the video. Every time I'd asked for help. Every time I'd been mocked. I wasn't even sure why at first. Maybe it was to remind myself I wasn't crazy. Maybe it was just to put it somewhere. But as I wrote, something shifted. I realized this wasn't just about me having a rough week. This was about a pattern, a culture inside my own family, where my pain was treated like an inconvenience, where I was expected to suffer quietly to keep the group comfortable. I took screenshots of the TikTok comments and downloaded the video in case Jake deleted it later. My hands were steady. I wasn't panicking, I was planning. For the first time on that trip, I felt in control. Later that afternoon, they came back from their hike, sweaty and sunburned, laughing loudly as they walked through the door. I didn't say a word. I stayed in the kitchen, back-turned, sipping water. My mom breezed past me. "You missed some great views," she said. "Hope you at least took a shower." I looked at her, not angry, just studying her. She didn't even notice. Jake flopped on the couch and finally noticed his phone was gone. "Hey, did anyone see my— oh." He grabbed it from the counter. I watched as his face shifted. Did someone go through my phone?" I said nothing. He looked at me. "Did you open TikTok?" "Still?" I said nothing. My mom raised an eyebrow. "Madison?" Her tone already hinted I was the problem. I turned to face all of them. "You posted a video of me while I was in pain. You made fun of me. And now it's viral." Jake shrugged. "It's not that serious. People post stuff like that all the time. It's a joke. You turned me into content," I said quietly, when I was literally sick. My dad stepped in like he always did, trying to diffuse. "Let's all calm down." I cut him off. "No, not this time. You don't get to calm down your way out of this." I asked for help. Multiple times. I begged to rest. And all of you ignored me, made fun of me, or told me to toughen up. My mom frowned. "You're being dramatic again. You're not the only one on this trip." I smiled then. A sharp, tiny smile. "No, I'm not. But I'm the only one who got turned into a viral joke for bleeding." That night, I made a new TikTok account. I didn't show my face. I didn't say my name. I just posted a clip of Jake's video, but with my own captions. 15F, on my period, asked to rest, got filmed and mocked by my family. I let the footage speak for itself. Then I added my own overlay, normalized treating girls on their period like people, not punchlines. I disabled comments, just posted and left it. The next morning it had 100K views. By noon, 400K. By evening, over 1 million. People stitched it, duetted it. Girls commented with their own horror stories. Period pain school nurses saying just breathe through it, coaches who benched them for attitude problems, families who laughed instead of helped. It hit a nerve. Somehow, my story wasn't just mine anymore. It became a mirror for thousands of others. And suddenly, my silence turned into a ripple. My family didn't know yet. They were out wine tasting while I stayed back to rest. But I was tracking it all. News accounts started picking it up. Anonymous teen's video sparks national debate on menstrual stigma. I was scared. But more than that, I was awake. I had always believed if I just behaved, if I kept quiet, if I didn't rock the boat, they'd eventually respect me. But respect doesn't come from silence. It comes from being seen. And I wasn't going to hide anymore. That evening, we had dinner at this overpriced steakhouse with a view of the desert sunset. My mom insisted we go because she'd made the reservation 6 months ago. I didn't want to fight, so I went. But I noticed something the moment we sat down. Jake's phone kept buzzing. Constantly. His screen lit up with notifications. I saw it. So did he. He looked uneasy for the first time all trip. Finally, halfway through dinner, he leaned toward me. "Did you post something?" I took a sip of my water. "What do you think?" he whispered. "You're ruining my life." I smiled again. "Welcome to mine." My mom caught on. "What is going on?" she asked, annoyed. Jake blurted out, "She posted the video, the one I made. It's blowing up." My mom's face darkened. Madison, you didn't get permission to share that. I raised my eyebrows. And you got my permission to post it first? She had no answer. My dad rubbed his temples. Can we just eat dinner? But it was too late. The balance had shifted. I wasn't the invisible one anymore. They were the ones being watched. By the end of that meal, I knew something had changed. The control they'd held over me through guilt, silence, and shame had cracked. For the first time, they weren't sure what I would do next. And I liked that. They didn't know who they were dealing with anymore. Because I wasn't just Madison, the moody teen with cramps. I was the girl who finally stopped apologizing for bleeding, and I had 1,000,000 people standing behind me. The car ride back to the Airbnb that night was dead silent. No music, no small talk, no arguing either, which somehow felt worse. Everyone was processing what had just happened. Jake kept glancing at his phone like it might explode. My mom sat in the front seat, rigid, arms crossed, jaw clenched. My dad just drove. I stared out the window at the Arizona desert, warm light still fading in the sky, and for the first time all trip, I felt calm. When we pulled into the driveway, Mom turned around and said, "We'll talk about this later." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I wasn't waiting for their permission anymore. I went inside, grabbed my journal, and started writing again. Not just what happened at dinner, but everything I remembered from the past few years. The subtle comments, the rolled eyes, the lectures about being too emotional, the way I was always expected to sacrifice, stay silent, and smooth things over. That night I barely slept. My body still ached, but my mind was wide awake. For hours, I scrolled through the stitches and duets on TikTok, watching strangers speak up about their own pain. One girl shared how she'd passed out from period cramps in gym class and was sent back to run laps after 5 minutes in the nurse's office. Another talked about how her dad told her to suck it up because women have been doing this for centuries. The stories weren't surprising, but they were validating. I wasn't alone. I wasn't weak. I was just tired of pretending I didn't deserve to be taken seriously. And that's when the idea came. I didn't want revenge just to humiliate my family. I wanted to create something that couldn't be ignored. Something that made them and people like them rethink the way they treat girls who speak up about their pain. If I was going to be heard, it had to be bigger than a viral moment. It had to be smart, strategic. I started outlining a plan. Step 1, keep documenting. I created a folder labeled Evidence and backed up everything screenshots of the original video DMs from people confirming they'd seen it on Jake's account, even the family group texts where my mom kept insisting I was exaggerating for attention. Step 2, continue the narrative, but control it. I made follow-up TikToks not to attack, but to explain. I talked about what happened without naming names. I shared what it felt like to be mocked for something you couldn't control. I talked about the silence girls are expected to keep. And I asked a simple question. Why do we protect people who embarrass us for their own comfort? By the next morning, the campaign had a hashtag, #pain is not a problem. It was trending, and it was spreading far beyond me. Teachers started commenting, nurses, moms, even a few dads. A pediatrician stitched my video and explained how society still treats menstrual health like a nuisance, not a real issue. Celebrities were liking it. Then came the articles, BuzzFeed, Teen Vogue, even a local reporter from Colorado reached out asking if I'd speak anonymously. I didn't say yes, not yet. I wasn't ready to put my name out there, but I wasn't hiding either. Meanwhile, my family spiraled. Jake deleted his original TikTok, but it was too late. The screen recordings were everywhere. Kids from our school were commenting on the reposts, recognizing his voice, his username. He tried to deny it at first, claimed the video was edited, but someone posted a side-by-side. He couldn't run from it. Mom kept pacing the Airbnb, mumbling about reputation and damage control. At one point, she looked at me and asked, "Why are you doing this to us?" That was when I truly saw it. How deeply she believed her comfort mattered more than my reality. I replied, "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just finally telling the truth." She didn't respond. That day, while they stayed inside arguing about family unity and what people might think, I took a walk. I needed space to think clearly. I ended up at this quiet overlook near the canyon rim, sat on a rock, and opened my journal again. This time, I didn't just vent. I asked myself what I actually wanted. Did I want them to apologize? To feel bad? Maybe, but mostly I wanted them to learn. To stop treating emotions like weakness. To stop acting like my pain was embarrassing. To stop demanding silence as a condition of being loved. I went back to the Airbnb and drafted a letter. Not a dramatic monologue, just a list. A list of every time I had spoken up and been dismissed. Every time I'd been told to push through, to smile, to not ruin the vibe. I ended it with one line: "I will no longer shrink to make room for your comfort." I printed 3 copies and left one on each pillow before dinner. They didn't say anything at first. Jake avoided eye contact. My dad looked like he wanted to disappear. My mom sat quietly rereading it, lips tight. That was the breaking point, not for them maybe, but for me. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I had nothing left to prove. I'd told the truth. I'd reclaimed my voice. And now I was watching them realize what it meant to lose control of the narrative. I went to bed early that night. My phone buzzed nonstop. Another celebrity had reposted my video. Schools were using the hashtag in health class. People were organizing meetups to talk about period equity. It was surreal. All from one moment, one choice to stop being quiet. The world was listening. And suddenly, for the first time in my life, they had to decide how to act while I held the power. This wasn't revenge. This was transformation. The next morning felt different. The air was heavier, quieter. There was no clatter of breakfast dishes, no sound of my mom rehearsing the day's itinerary, no video game noises from my brothers. Just silence. I sat on the couch, sipping coffee, slowly listening to the subtle discomfort fill the Airbnb. For once, I wasn't the one trying to break the tension. I wasn't smoothing things over or pretending everything was fine. I just let it sit. Let them feel the weight of everything they'd ignored. Jake finally walked in, shoulders slouched, eyes on the floor. Are you gonna keep it up? He mumbled. Not quite an apology, not quite a confrontation. I looked at him calm. I'm not taking it down. Not until you understand what you did. Not until Mom stops treating this like a PR crisis instead of what it really is. He didn't respond. Just nodded slowly, then walked back to his room. That was enough for now. He was starting to get it. Meanwhile, my TikTok account kept gaining traction. Pain is not. Problem became more than just a trend. It became a movement. People started tagging me in their own videos, holding up signs at school, even organizing small meetups where girls shared their experiences about being ignored, dismissed, or mocked for their pain. I hadn't planned for any of this. But now that it was happening, I felt responsible in the best way. I wasn't just telling my story anymore. I was amplifying others. I responded to DMs, duetted posts, even helped a couple girls draft letters to their schools requesting better period resources. This wasn't about me being famous, it was about not being alone. Later that day, I opened my email and saw a message from a national nonprofit that supports reproductive education in public schools. They'd seen my video. They wanted to talk. They were launching a new youth ambassador program and asked if I'd consider joining, even helping them write social media content. I sat there for a few minutes just staring at the screen. This was real. People weren't just listening, they were offering platforms, opportunities, space to keep making noise. But my family still didn't get it. Not really. My mom tried to pivot. She started framing the situation like it was a teachable moment she'd created on purpose. Maybe this will be a good thing for you, she said at dinner that night. Something to put on your college applications. I nearly choked on my water. You seriously think this is your success story? I asked. She shrugged, defensive. You're turning it into something good. That's what matters. I shook my head. No. What matters is that you've never apologized. Not once. You're just trying to spin this so you don't look bad. She looked genuinely shocked, like the thought hadn't occurred to her. And maybe it hadn't. My mom was the type to fix messes by pretending they didn't happen smiling over the cracks. But this wasn't something a family photo could hide. The internet doesn't forget. And I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story just because it made her uncomfortable. My dad finally spoke up. "She's right, Cheryl. We were wrong. We all were." It was quiet, almost reluctant, but I appreciated it. Even Jake muttered something that vaguely resembled a sorry, which for him might as well have been a written confession. Logan stayed quiet. He'd been oddly distant since the video blew up. Maybe he was embarrassed. Maybe he was just scared that people at school would find it and turn on him too. But I wasn't done yet. Not with them, not with the world. The next day, I launched a live stream Q&A. I'd been getting so many questions in the comments, I figured it was easier to answer them all at once. I kept my face off-screen, still anonymous, but my voice was clear. I talked about what happened, how it felt, and why silence wasn't an option anymore. Thousands of people watched live. Some messaged me afterward saying they'd shown the stream to their parents or their health teachers. A few girls wrote that they finally felt brave enough to talk to their dads about period pain. That's when I knew I'd crossed from reaction to revolution. I wasn't just responding, I was leading something. Back at the Airbnb, I took the final step in my plan. I emailed my school's student council with a proposal, a menstrual health awareness week complete with info sessions, guest speakers, and supply drives. I offered to organize the whole thing. I attached the TikTok link as context. Within hours, they responded. The president said yes. The faculty sponsor said they'd help. I was officially in charge of the first initiative of its kind at our school. That night, I printed out the email thread and laid it on the kitchen table. When my parents came in, I pointed to it and said, "This is what standing up looks like. Not hiding, not blaming, not staying silent to protect someone else's comfort." My dad read it and smiled. A real smile. "I'm proud of you," he said. My mom looked away. "You're doing good work," she said flatly, which wasn't an apology, but it wasn't nothing. Jake finally asked if I'd help him write a post to explain himself. Not just a notes app apology, but something real, honest. He said he'd learned more in the last 3 days than he had all year. I agreed to help, but only after he agreed to let me approve the final version. I wasn't going to let this become another moment for him to play victim. It had to come from the truth. And he did it. He posted it. Said what he did, why it was wrong, how he didn't understand until the world made him see. The comments were surprisingly kind. People respected the honesty. Some even forgave him. But more importantly, I watched him finally listen instead of joke. As the trip wound down, the energy shifted. We weren't magically healed, but the air between us felt different. Lighter, more honest. I had power now. Not over them, but over my own voice, my story. And that changed everything. The last few days of the trip blurred together in this weird mix of tension and careful politeness. No one raised their voice. No one joked at my expense. It was almost eerie, like my family had collectively realized they were walking on ground they used to own, but didn't anymore. I'd taken that ground back. And now they were guests in a space where my voice actually mattered. We still went sightseeing. We still took photos. But something had changed, and not just on the surface. It was in the way my mom didn't bark out commands anymore. In the way Jake glanced at me before speaking. In the way my dad started asking questions instead of brushing things aside. None of it erased what had happened, but it showed me they were at least trying to step out of the bubble they'd lived in for years. When we finally got home, the reality of what I'd set in motion hit even harder. I walked through our front door, set my bag down, and checked my phone. My inbox was full. More schools had reached out asking for permission to use clips from my videos in their health curriculums. 2 middle schools in Texas wanted me to Zoom in for Q&A sessions. A podcast about teen advocacy wanted to schedule an interview. I had to laugh for a second. A week ago, I was the moody daughter who ruined vacations with her attitude. Now I was the girl who accidentally started a national conversation. But not everyone back home was supportive. By the time I went back to school, word had gotten around. People recognized my voice matched the audio to the anonymous clips, and even though I never confirmed it was me enough, people figured it out. Some girls came up to me between classes and said thank you. Others messaged me privately, sharing their own experiences with family dismissal or being told they were overreacting. That part felt good. But there were others kids who rolled their eyes, whispered as I walked by, or laughed like it was still just a joke. Some called me a drama queen turned activist. One girl from my math class posted a snarky TikTok mocking the campaign. Not all of us need a movement just to survive cramps. It stung, but it didn't break me. What hurt more was when a teacher I respected, a woman, pulled me aside and told me to tone it down if I wanted to be taken seriously. "You've made your point, Madison," she said. "But too much noise and people stop listening." I nodded politely, walked away, and deleted her from the list of people I'd ever take seriously again. I wasn't doing this for attention. I was doing it because silence had been my prison for so long. And now that I'd escaped, I wasn't going back in. At home, the tension came in waves. Some days were peaceful. Other days, especially when my mom was stressed, she'd revert. Little digs, passive-aggressive comments like, "Wish I could just cry and get people to listen to me too." I stopped reacting. I let her reveal herself. My dad, though, surprised me. He started reading the comments on my posts. One night, I saw him sitting in the living room scrolling through the original TikTok, just watching. I sat down next to him, not saying anything, and after a few minutes, he looked at me and said, "I really didn't get it. But I do now." It wasn't a grand apology, but it felt honest, and that mattered more. Jake had the hardest time at school. His video resurfaced in group chats, and even though he'd apologized, some people didn't let him forget. He came home one afternoon, slammed his bedroom door, and didn't come out for hours. When I finally knocked, he opened it, eyes red. "You happy now?" he snapped. I looked at him, not angry, just honest. "No, I'm not happy you're hurting. But I didn't make this happen. You did. I just told the truth." He nodded slowly. "I didn't think it would blow up. I just thought it was funny." I paused. It's always funny until someone tells the other side. Logan stayed distant, watching everything unfold from the sidelines. He didn't say much, but one night he left a note on my desk. It just said, "I'm sorry. I didn't get it, but I'm learning." I kept that note in my journal. It meant more than any forced apology. Through it all, I kept building. I created a private forum where girls could share their stories anonymously. I started writing articles for the school paper about menstrual equity and how health education needed an upgrade. The counselor asked if I'd speak at the next parent-teacher night. I said yes. I wasn't afraid of grown-ups anymore. But with all that attention came pressure. Expectations. Everyone wanted me to be the voice for something bigger than myself. Some days I felt empowered. Other days I felt exhausted. Like I was carrying a conversation the world had avoided for too long. I wasn't a politician. I was just a teenager who got fed up. And the more I spoke up, the more I realized how deep the problem went. It wasn't just about periods. It was about listening, about respect, about being told that your feelings matter even if they make someone else uncomfortable. One night, I got an email from a mom in another state. Her daughter had watched my video and used it to finally tell her family how bad her endometriosis pain really was. They hadn't believed her before, but after seeing how I framed it, they finally took her to a specialist. She ended the message with, "You didn't just help my daughter, you changed the way I see her." I cried when I read that, not because I felt proud, but because I remembered what it felt like to be invisible. And now I wasn't. The truth is, revenge didn't look the way I thought it would. I didn't burn bridges. I didn't scream in anyone's face. I just refused to stay quiet. I told the truth loudly and clearly and let the world decide what to do with it. And the world surprisingly chose to listen. My family was still figuring it out. We weren't fixed. We weren't healed. But for the first time, they weren't pretending everything was fine. That was a start. And as for me, I was finally free. Not from them, but from the version of myself that thought being quiet was the same thing as being strong. Looking back, I used to think power came from being loud, from having the last word, from proving everyone wrong in some dramatic explosion. But I've learned that real power often starts in silence. It begins the moment you realize your story has value, even when others treat it like background noise. For me, it started on a trip where I was told to suck it up, blend in, and stop ruining the mood. What they didn't expect was that the quietest girl in the room would be the one who made the most noise. Yes, what happened with my family wasn't some movie-style revenge plot. I didn't destroy them. I didn't want to. I wanted recognition, respect, understanding. I wanted them to stop seeing my emotions as obstacles. I wanted them to stop expecting me to make myself small so they could be comfortable. And while we're not perfect now, I do think they heard me in the end. Not because I yelled louder, but because I stopped letting them ignore me. This story isn't just mine. It belongs to anyone who's ever been told they're too much. Anyone who's been made to feel ashamed of their body's natural rhythms. Anyone who's been told to stay quiet for the sake of peace. If you've ever been talked over, laughed at, or brushed aside for expressing pain, know this: your experience is real. And when you speak, you give others permission to speak too. What I never expected was how many people would relate. The comments, the messages, the videos. It made me realize how common this is. How many families still treat menstruation like an inconvenience. How many teachers still skip that chapter in health class. How many boys are never taught what empathy looks like. We grow up in a world that asks girls to perform strength while denying their pain. But pain doesn't make us weak. Hiding it does. Since that trip, I've kept writing, kept organizing. I even helped launch a campaign at my school to get free period products in every bathroom. I've sat in rooms with adults twice my age and told them that ignoring these conversations doesn't make them disappear. It just forces people like me to carry the weight alone. And while there are still moments where I feel overwhelmed, where I doubt myself, I also feel a fire now that I never want to lose. Sometimes change doesn't come from power. It comes from pain. It comes from the moment you realize no one's coming to save you, and so you save yourself. And when you do, you make it easier for the next girl to do the same. If you've listened this far, thank you. I hope my story made you think about the little things, the way you talk to people when they're struggling, the way you respond to someone asking for rest, the way you treat discomfort when it's not your own. Maybe you're a parent, a sibling, a teacher, or a friend. Maybe you've been Madison, or maybe you've been Jake. Either way, this is your chance to do better, to listen harder, to show up differently. So let's keep talking. Let's keep pushing. Let's make sure the next generation doesn't have to fight this same fight just to be heard. If this story resonated with you, share it. Comment with your own experience. Let's create space for honesty, for empathy, for growth. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Because this isn't the end of the conversation, it's just the beginning. Until next time, speak up, stand tall, and never let anyone tell you that your pain doesn't matter.